procedures that will guarantee the peaceful transition of power.
People were really heckling, people were chanting in the crowd. Clearly this falls far short of what their demands were.
Feeling fear has gone into possibly that of anger. They are extremely furious. They don't understand how the sheer amount of numbers that have come out in the streets in recent days has not been enough to convince them.
It galvanized and inspired, and perhaps with the help of other elements, triggered a great deal of pro-Mubarak supporters who felt that the president had been humbled, that the president had been, in some ways, forced into this position. And what we saw afterwards triggered a lot of violence.
As we were trying to make our way out of Tahrir Square, a lot of the protesters were actually trying to make their way back into the square and telling us not to leave, that there were reports of pro-Mubarak supporters heading into the heart of downtown to Tahrir Square to confront the protesters.
It isn't quite clear who the Mubarak supporters are, but with their arrival comes violence.
Okay. Do you hear the gunfire?
We hear shots being fired.
Well, clearly the confrontations seem to have begun between the two sides. We have seen dozens of the protesters disperse, run in different directions. There's clearly a sense of panic here.
US President Obama speaks to Mubarak for 30 minutes on the telephone. America urges the Egyptian president to back down.
After his speech, I spoke directly to President Mubarak. He recognizes that the status quo is not sustainable and that a change must take place.
Other Arab governments are already feeling the effect of the masses in Liberation Square. Ali Abdullah Saleh, Yemen's president of 30 years, announces he will step down in 2013. But the Egyptian regime is not going quietly.
No one should forget that President Mubarak is the one who brought peace to our country. For 30 years, we haven't had any wars.
The day after the Million Man March, we could see these groups of pro-Mubarak supporters now hitting the streets.
Kind of slogans they've been shouting are, with our blood and our soul, we will sacrifice for Mubarak.
State TV is reporting that they are warning people of expected violence around the protests today.
I was in the middle of a pro-Mubarak demonstration. The people I met were really very, very frenzied, very, very heated.
At the moment, it is a war of voices as to who can chant the loudest.
The pro-Mubarak supporters came all the way right into the heart of Tahrir Square. They faced off with the anti-government protesters. There was not a security officer of any description, no police, no army, no anybody to try and keep these two sides apart. They were face to face, Egyptian to Egyptian, with just millimetres apart.
Yes, I believe that clashes have erupted between both the supporters, and you can see it underway on the square.
If we're going to call them protesters, they're throwing stones at people, and people are getting wounded. Here's one who's completely messed up, passing in front of me. He's very badly wounded. Suddenly we saw rocks flying in all directions. I can't tell you exactly who was throwing them. It was total mayhem. And then, if you can imagine, it was a complete stampede. Hundreds of people turning back and trying to run the other way. I saw people being trampled on, and I myself have been hit on the face, punched in the eye.
From nowhere, a charge of 8 people riding horses and one guy riding a camel have come charging up the street on the pro-Mubarak side and have hit the anti-government protesters who had made a linked arms to stop this, hit them at full force, burst through.
That for some of the young men who'd come out, particularly on the pro-Mubarak side, it was almost like a day out for them. I got the impression that they were really enjoying themselves. It was almost like a real-life video game. Some demonstrators had taken up vantage points on top of nearby buildings, and they were throwing huge slabs of rock, chairs, all sorts of projectiles at the anti-government demonstrators below. It was an extremely violent scene.
As darkness falls, Egypt descends into chaos.
They were smashing the lights on the street so that everything went dark. They were covering their faces with balaclavas. They were making the makeshift bombs, the homemade bombs in the canisters in front of us.
We've lost a lot of people, and we've lost them for a cause. The cause is that we wanted Mubarak to be out. We owe it to them to stick it till the end. They are shooting. There are people, there are some of the thugs with rifles on the bridge, and they shot at our demonstrators. Like the latest of our dead protesters, he was shot right through the head. I had two friends watching this happen. We are not leaving this place till Mubarak leaves.
For the journalists who were witnessing it, what you were seeing was a brutality that completely disrupted what had been a very peaceful protest. These images were frightening to see. People in cars just trying to drive over protesters.
For his safety, one of our correspondents spends the night in a mosque on Tahrir Square with the pro-democracy demonstrators.
This university lecturer, as he was explaining to me, he was just crying his eyes out at the struggle that was taking place, of how badly he wanted freedom and of how close they were getting to freedom. And you could see in their face that there was an incredible amount of determination, but there was also this hint of fear that perhaps that taste of freedom they'd had the day before was going to be all they were going to get.
Well, I'm actually in the middle of Tahrir Square, of Liberation Square, and this is a scene of a battlefield. There is no other way to describe it. There are still many injured people here. The faces I'm looking at are just of sheer exhaustion, of fear, of panic. I've spoken to 2 doctors. They counted 7 dead bodies yesterday. I'm looking at one man now who's walking towards me. His entire garments are bloodied.